Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum students. There is the skeletal muscle relaxants part 2. In this lecture we are going to discuss depolarizing neuromuscular blockers. In my previous lecture I have told you about non-depolarizing neuromuscular blockers. I am going to repeat. Non-depolarizing neuromuscular blockers are competitive blockers. That is, they compete with the acetylcholine to bind to the receptor. And these are the depolarizing blockers. It means that they are non-competitive, and as the name is indicating, they depolarize the motor end plate. But how they relax the muscles, I am going to tell you. First of all, mechanism of action. There are two types of blocks. Number one, phase 1 block, and it is depolarizing. That is, in this phase, the neuromuscular blocker, that is succinylcholine, succinylcholine is a depolarizing blocker. It is going to depolarize the motor end plate. Succinylcholine reacts with nicotinic receptors to open the channel and cause depolarization of the motor end plate, which will spread to adjacent membranes and causing contractions of the muscle motor units. Be clear, in the phase 1 block, it is depolarization just like acetylcholine. But what happens? Number two, this succinylcholine can enter the channel to produce a prolonged flickering of the ion conductance. Means to say, it can occupy the receptor site of the acetylcholine as well as ion channel. It can enter the channel. The depolarized membrane remain depolarized. As you know, for your muscle contraction, there is contraction and then relaxation and then contraction. This is going on in your body. But in this case of neuromuscular blockers, which are depolarizing and non-competitive, in this case the depolarized membrane remain depolarized. This is the most important point. Why relaxation occurs? Because the depolarized membrane remain depolarized and it becomes unresponsive to subsequent impulses. That is, the impulses that are coming, that cause the muscle to contract, but the muscle is not responding because its membrane has become unresponsive. So there will be flaccid paralysis, and this paralysis is augmented by choline esterase inhibitors. Now is the phase 2 block. What is phase 2 block? First one is the depolarizing, and the phase 2 block is desensitizing. Be clear. Phase 1 block is depolarizing, but phase 2 block is desensitizing. With continued exposure, depolarization decreases and the membrane becomes repolarized and cannot be depolarized again because it is desensitized. This may be due to blockade of the ion channel, which might be more important than the action of the agonist at the receptor. Be clear. Okay, succinylcholine is going to act on the receptor, I have told you, and it is agonist here. But this desensitization, which is phase 2 block, this may be due to blockade of the ion channel. These channels behave as if they are in prolonged closed state. That acetylcholine feels that the channel is closed. So this phase is reversed by acetylcholine esterase inhibitors. Yeah, you can see here difference between non-depolarizing, which we have discussed in our previous lecture. They act on closed channel, and when they act on closed channel, the channel remain blocked. There will be no opening of the channel. But will with depolarizing block, it will act on the receptor as well as inside of the channel. Channel will open but behave like blocked. Channel will open but behave like block. This is the difference between the non-depolarizing and the depolarizing block. There is certain pharmacokinetics of these blockers. They are polar quaternary compounds. As you know, the quaternary compounds are not absorbed orally. They do not cross the cell membranes. They have a low volume of distribution. They do not cross the blood-brain barrier as well as placental barrier, and they are usually given intravenously. The muscles with high blood flow are affected earlier. Redistribution also takes place. In the drugs that are metabolized in the plasma liver, they have short half-life. Examples are vicuronium, atracurium, endocrinium, and these are non-depolarizing neuromuscular blockers. Similarly, the drugs that are excreted in the urine, they have longer half-life like D-tubochlorine and pancuronium. Succinylcholine, which is a depolarizing neuromuscular blocker, it is converted to succinyl monocholine, then succinic acid and plus choline, and its duration of action is only 3 to 5 minutes, and this is sufficient for endotracheal intubation. But in some genetically determined patients, there is abnormality and deficient pseudokinase. In this case, paralysis and apnea can take place. Succinylcholine is the most commonly used skeletal muscle relaxant for the endotracheal intubation. It provides good intubation conditions, like it relaxes the jaw, separated the vocal cords with immobility, and there is no diaphragmatic movements, and it has quick onset of action. As you administer succinylcholine intravenously, within 1 to 2 minutes, the patient's trachea, patient becomes relaxed, muscles relaxed, and you can do endotracheal intubation and put to the patient on the artificial respiration. As regards the disadvantages, unpredictable blood pressure, heart rate, and arrhythmias can take place. Succinylcholine can cause fasciculations, and due to these fasciculations, patient can experience muscle pain. Patient may have, due to these fasciculations, increase intraocular pressure, so be kept in mind in patients of glaucoma. Similarly, because of these fasciculations, there may be increase in intragastric pressure, and patient may aspirate. Similarly, patient may it may cause increase in intracranial pressure. It can cause hyperkalemia, potassium efflux from the muscles, and it may be life-threatening in patients with chronic heart failure and in patients with diuretics. It is not indicated below the 18 years of age, and moreover, most important, it can cause malignant hyperthermia. What is malignant hyperthermia? We are going to discuss in the next slide. It is a rare genetically determined reaction to the susceptible persons having abnormal ryanodine receptor. This receptor is present in your muscles. Ryanodine receptor calcium channel. This is usually caused by halothane. It is a general anesthetic, and it manifests as high temperature, very high temperature. Why this is patient experience high temperature? Because of persistent muscle contraction due to increased intracellular calcium, and succinylcholine increases this condition, contribute to this condition. Treatment: rapid external cooling, you can use ice packs. Similarly, you can give patient to bicarbonate infusion, 100% oxygen inhalation, and most important is the injection of dantrolene. And this is the direct acting muscle relaxant. I have told you that muscle relaxant types, that the muscle relaxant may be that act on the neuromuscular junctions, that are depolarizing and non-depolarizing, and the muscle relaxants may be centrally acting, and the muscle relaxant may be that act directly on the muscle fiber. So the dantrolene is the direct acting muscle relaxant. Succinyl apnea usually occurs in the patient who are deficient of pseudocholine esterase. So we are going to discuss here the directly acting muscle relaxants. Dantrolene acts on the ryanodine receptor calcium channels in the sarcoplasmic reticulum of the skeletal muscle. So this receptor is present in your skeletal muscles, where in sarcoplasmic reticulum, and it prevents the calcium induced calcium release through the sarcoplasmic reticulum. So there will be less calcium, so less muscle contraction, and patient's temperature will come back, and the patient's condition will relax. Dantrolene is slowly but adequately absorbed from the GIT. It penetrates the brain and produces some sedation, but has no selective effect on polysynaptic reflexes responsible for spasticity. So basically, it is a directly acting skeletal muscle relaxant which we use in patients to treat malignant. Now comes our next class of skeletal muscle relaxant, that is centrally acting muscle relaxant. Here is a comparison between centrally acting and peripheral acting. Centrally acting decreases the muscle tone without reducing the voluntary power, but peripherally acting causes muscle paralysis, so there will be no voluntary power. Centrally acting selectively inhibit polysynaptic reflexes in the CNS, but peripherally acting block neuromuscular transmission. Centrally acting causes CNS depression, while peripheral acting no effect on the CNS. Centrally acting are usually given orally, sometimes we can give parenterally, but peripherally acting always given intravenously. Centrally acting are used in chronic spastic conditions, acute muscle spasm and tetanus, while we use peripherally acting skeletal muscle relaxants in surgical operations. Here is the classification of centrally acting muscle relaxants. There is mifenycin congeners, and here is the examples of these drugs. Similarly, we have benzodiazepines. You have studied benzodiazepine in details. So the example is diazepam and other drugs. Similarly, we have GABA-mimetic drugs. GABA-mimetic comes the baclofen and thiocolchicine. There are central alpha-2 agonists like tizanidine. It is a congener of clonidine. Clonidine, you well know about clonidine. What is clonidine? It is an antihypertensive, and this is tizanidine. It is a congener of clonidine. So we have these four types of centrally acting muscle. We are going to discuss this baclofen. This is GABA-mimetic and it acts on GABA B receptors. Diazepam acts on GABA A receptor, but this baclofen acts on GABA B receptors, and it is analog of the inhibitory transmitter GABA. It acts as a selective GABA B receptor agonist. It means that it increases the activity of this neurotransmitter. Primary site of action of baclofen is considered to be in the spinal cord, where it depresses both the polysynaptic and monosynaptic reflexes that are responsible for the muscle spasm. So they are going to depress them, so there will be a decrease in the muscle spasm. As such, is just produce muscle weakness, but is less sedative than diazepam, which is GABA A that acts on GABA A receptor. Baclofen is well absorbed orally and is primarily excreted unchanged in the urine with a half-life of. As regards the side effects of baclofen, it can produce some degree of drowsiness, mental confusion, weakness, and ataxia. Serum transaminases may rise. Sudden withdrawal after chronic use may cause hallucinations, tachycardia. Second centrally acting muscle relaxant is tizanidine. I have told you it is a clonidine congener and it acts on central alpha-2 adrenergic agonist, and it inhibits the release of excitatory amino acids in the spinal interneurons. And you well know that these excitatory amino acids like glycine, these facilitate the pain. So they inhibit the release of these excitatory amino acids, so there will be depression of these polysynaptic reflexes, and patient's pain will be released, the patient's muscles will relax, and patient will feel better. Xanidine's side effects are dry mouth, drowsiness, nighttime insomnia, and hallucinations. It can cause dose-dependent elevation of liver enzymes. Though no consistent effect on BP has been observed, it should be avoided in patients receiving antihypertensive drugs, especially clonidine. Why we use these centrally acting muscle relaxants? We use them in acute muscle spasm, torticollis, lumbago, backache, and neuralgias, in anxiety and tension. We can use them in spastic neurological diseases, in tetanus, in electroconvulsive therapy, and orthopedic. Thank you very much. This was all about your skeletal muscle relaxants.